Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hangout Hour, episode 132. I am here today with Dave Lawson on a little sub series we start. There's another episode of a little sub series we have on Britton's Hangout Hour called Some Okie Dudes, where I have a fellow Okie on the show. Dave, how you doing today? Or
Doing
this
great. How
evening,
about
I
you?
should say, because we're in the same state.
Yeah, but I'm on the better side of the state.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm right in the heart, right in the middle. Yeah. So take that. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great. I am pet sitting for a friend, so I've got these two little dachshunds that are pretty excited to have me around right now.
Yeah, I see one of them poking his head out, and
Yeah, she is. She's all about sitting in my lap. The other one's across the couch taking a nap, but
fair enough.
he just wants to be nearby you, but asleep, where she needs to be like on you at all times.
Fair enough. So you're an indie author,
I
a
am.
fellow, or I wouldn't say fellow. I haven't published anything yet, but you're one of the indie authors on the internet sphere. You've written the Envoys of Chaos series.
Yep. I'm writing the Envoys of Chaos series.
Fair enough.
Only the first book and a novella are out right now, but I'm working on book two currently.
So how would you pitch that for people who don't know what it is?
So I would say it is a snarky fantasy with a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons meets The Witcher meets some vibes of Pirates of the Caribbean
Mm.
together in a fantasy full of banter and shenanigans and moments of darkness, but it's definitely more lighthearted than some of them out there. Even if the new novella that just came out, people have been telling me that I'm trying to make them cry in
Oh well, I guess you're doing something right if you're doing that.
it.
I've also seen you on Mike Mullman and Balden or Balden
Balding
Balding
Balding,
from
yeah.
time to time.
I've been on Balding Balding a few times, been on the Bearded Book Beast
Mm-hmm.
a few times, Rowdy Player One.
I think I've seen that one.
Been on Kay's Hidden Shelf once.
Mm.
Realm Runners, which is a new show Willow Wraith Press is, which I'm a member of, is putting out. That's another one that hopefully people start watching. Pete is the host, and he's doing some pretty cool stuff with that one.
I see. I see. I have only seen two or three of those. So yeah, one of those like a podcast.
So Realm Runners is like it's a YouTube live, but it is on Spotify.
Mm.
And Pete, I think his Twitter handle is like Pete Reviews Books Good, or Pete. It might be Pete Reviews Books now, but
Okay.
he does that. He's had me, ZB Steele, a few other people on there, and I think he's gonna have Anthony Ryan on and some other like bigger name people here in the next few months. But it's called Realm Runners. It's on almost every week, I would say. But I was just on there last week, so obviously it's my new favorite show because the last episode had me on it.
Of course, of course. My dad always says people like to talk about themselves. So
I
there
mean,
you
it's
go.
true.
You and him would get along. So, a question I like to ask authors when I have them on: what got you to start writing? Which is probably like the most cliched question I can ask, but it's something that interests me. So there you
Yeah.
go.
I've been writing for forever. But like whenever I was in high school, I was writing plays. And then I went to OSU, go Pokes, and my majored in creative writing.
Mm.
Um, and I was writing literary fiction. So like happening in the present day, no fantasy, like very little action, not much plot. It was
Mm-hmm.
really like very much like supposed to be literary and artistic.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in that program. I got my bachelor's degree in that. I wrote some screenplays during that time as well. I went and I got a master's degree in fiction writing
Mm.
from a school in New York City. And like, I wanted to be a professor of fiction writing and, you know, write my literary fiction and like publish it in literary fiction journals and all these things. And I started a PhD and I got burnt out and I kind of just stopped writing for a while.
Mm.
So I didn't do much writing from like 2011 to 2022, 2023. Um, and then I started playing D&D in like 2022, I'd say,
Mm-hmm.
and started getting back into like the creativity. I wrote a few little like short stories about characters in the D&D campaign. And then from there, I started writing. I wrote a short story that I took and then decided I'm going to write this into a novel. And the first novel just like came out over like 2 months of me just like that was all I did was write that novel. And then I spent, you know, quite a while revising, rewriting, editing, all those kind of things. But I don't really think that I was thinking like I'm going to write a novel and be a novelist and like get into the indie publishing community. You know, I didn't even know it existed.
Mm.
Um, I just like I've always liked writing. I have degrees in it, and I thought I'm going to write something that'll be fun. And then after I got I'm maybe about halfway through the first draft. I got onto some like Facebook writing groups, and then from there, I started an Instagram for a writer account and started
I think
like
that's where
trying to
I first
connect with
found you was on
writers
Instagram.
and stuff. And from there, I got on a few Discords, and then I heard that Twitter, like people kept talking about Twitter as the place. And the only Twitter that I had at that time was a soccer Twitter,
Hmm.
where I would like read soccer news and follow Sporting Kansas City and FC Tulsa and the U.S. national team. So
Mm-hmm.
like I really didn't use Twitter much at all. And then I made an author account, and it really has been like of the places, it's the one that's definitely like the easiest to make connections with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd say Instagram's probably the second best after that. But it's kind of crazy how none of that stuff existed. Like I didn't have any author related social media. I didn't know any indie authors at all until probably February or March of 2024.
I see.
Um, and so like I joined, I've always been pretty good at kind of putting myself out there, meeting people, getting things done. I mean, I'm a teacher. I've directed plays for several years, like through my schools that I've worked at. And like, you
Yeah, I was
have
gonna
to,
ask, like, what are you doing now?
I mean, it's summer vacation now. So
Oh, so
like, I'm right now, I'm dog sitting for a little bit extra money. And like, I sometimes deliver DoorDash for a little bit extra money.
mm,
I do some like editing job stuff on the
so
side for a little bit extra
you're a
money, just like
teacher.
yep, I teach English, and I have like I I'm switching to a new school next year where I won't be doing the drama department anymore, but
Mm,
I have been like the theater director at my old
mm,
school,
mm.
and the one before that, and that's a lot of fun, but it is so much time. Um, and my wife and I are trying to have kids, and so like it's one of those things where I need to kind of cut out some of the extra stuff that is like such a huge time commitment.
Yeah, I was about to say that sounds. I mean, I went to high school here for 4 years, so I know that teachers aren't always treated well. There was a whole
Yeah.
protest. There was a whole protest about it. About oh my god, almost 8 years
Yeah.
ago.
I lived in Taunton, Kansas when all that was going on. I moved I moved away from Oklahoma after college,
I was
went
about
to
to say,
New
I'm
York.
sure you don't remember that because,
I
well,
remember
or
it
maybe you
because my
remember it, but
older
you weren't
brother
here
was
during
teaching
that
in
time
Oklahoma.
because you said you weren't,
Um,
you didn't move back till like 2021. You said,
yeah, my older brother was a teacher in Oklahoma during that
oh,
time, so I heard about it. But I was teaching in Kansas,
mm,
and I'll definitely say that Kansas, their education system is a lot better than Oklahoma's. Um, I liked the school that I taught at, and I have good feelings about the one I'm moving to this next year. Um, but it's definitely like there was a lot more kind of. I felt like the Kansas state education system was a little bit more like put together, whereas Oklahoma, it seems like there's like a new thing that people are upset about like every week, and a lot of political stuff instead of just like education.
yeah, teachers aren't treated the best out here in Oklahoma from what I remember. Yeah, last the whole like I said, there was a whole protest about it. I remember going to the Capitol.
Yep.
Fun times.
And like they've upped the pay in Oklahoma, but when I moved from Kansas to Oklahoma after all of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I took a $9,000 pay cut to move back
Mm.
to Oklahoma, but I wanted to be closer to my family. So like it was worth it, but at the same time, like it's a pretty big pay cut.
There were some
Moving,
drawbacks.
like I moved 4 hours. I moved down one state because I was near Salina, Kansas, which is about an hour north of Wichita.
Mm.
So I basically moved 4 hours south and a little bit to the east, and $9,000 less because I moved from one state to another. Uh,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
good old Oklahoma.
So, you said you were part of or you ran the theater, for a while. I
Yeah.
remember I did some theater
Um,
when I was in middle school. Sadly, didn't keep up with it because little gun shy on stage.
it's one of those things where you get a lot of kids who at first are kind of nervous about it all, but once they kind of get going and they make some friends and everything like that, it becomes something that they really really enjoy. I loved doing that. And it's the kind of thing like if I could get a job as just the theater teacher at a school, I think I would be down for it. Trying to teach English all day and then do theater the last hour of the day and after school was just like it was a lot of work. Um, to where like if I got a job as just like teaching theater and directing, and that was my job during the day, I think I could make that work better. But like trying to you teach an English class all day long, and then it's like, all right, end of the day, now 3 hours of theater rehearsal.
Mm.
Um, it's kind of like coaches. I mean, I coached basketball in Kansas for a while, and it's another
Jeez,
thing
you
where
did
it's
all
like
three of those at the same time, or
so I did English, theater, and junior high basketball because the theater I was doing in Kansas was like the competitive speech, drama, and
oh
debate,
yeah,
which was in the spring semester.
did a little bit of
And
that when I was in high school.
that was fun. I coached they call it forensics in Kansas. In Oklahoma, they just call it like speech and debate.
Mm-hmm.
But I coached that in Kansas, but that was a springtime event, and junior high basketball was only fall semester.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, fall semester, I was one of the junior high basketball coaches. Spring semester, I coached the forensics team, and I directed a play one time at my old school, but there was like one of the other teachers, that was her thing, but she didn't want to do the forensics anymore. So I took that over. But at my last school, Wagner was where I'd been teaching. And I was the theater director. And like directed a one-act play in the fall and then like a musical in the spring. And the musicals are really fun, but man, they are so much work.
I was about to say I did a musical when I was in middle school. It was actually Annie. I did Annie in middle school. I played the butler called Drake. Let me tell you, it was a hassle. We had to help make sets and all that. I'm like, God, this freaking sucks. We had fun though. There was a lot of great memories I made from that. But you're
Annie's
right.
one
It's a lot of work.
Annie doesn't have a very big cast, but it requires like your main people to all be really, really good. One of the things we've always struggled with is finding enough guys who sing. Because there are some guys who are good singers, and there are guys who are great actors that I've had. But a lot of times they, like the ones who were really good actors, weren't amazing singers, and like they can make it work with some of the parts, but if it's like a part where they're supposed to be like singing a bunch of songs where they have to be a really good singer, it's hard to put someone who's kind of just okay into that role because they sing like half the songs in the play, and if they're not good, people aren't going. But like I had this one girl who was a junior this year, is like she should be on Broadway. That's how good she is. And so we kind of do the play based around like find one that had a really strong female lead because she would just kill it every single time.
That's good. I kind of got sick of theater because kind of the same reason I got sick of choir. Just the people and egos involved, and people are like acting like this is Broadway. I'm like, guys, we're in high school. Like, calm down. But I'm curious what you think of this. From the teacher's perspective. You're the guy who's like in charge of everything.
I mean, I've only really worked at smaller schools where we didn't have much of a budget. And it was often more of like finding people who wanted to do it, and they would get really, really like kind of like a little family where they were very close with each other and with the directors, and we had a lot of fun. But it wasn't like one of these huge programs with like so many people that you just like were like, here are my stars and all those random people that don't matter. It was like we had a small group, but they were all really important and dedicated, and just kind of, for me, I've never had that issue of like the kids who act like they're the greatest ever and don't want anything to do with others, because most of my kids have been like, they're just happy to have some other people that want to do it with them. But I've been lucky in that regard, I would say.
Yeah, I was about to say I've only gone to bigger schools like I want to out myself here, but yeah, because I live in OKC, so there's a lot more people out here than in probably where you're at. I don't know.
I mean, Tulsa's
pretty big too.
I graduated from Broken Arrow High School, which when I was there was the biggest high school in the state. I had like 1,400 students in my graduating class. And we had like 3,000 students in the school, and it was just juniors and seniors.
I was going to say, all right, that's a good amount of people.
The thing is that Broken Arrow has 120,000 people in one high school. Whereas like your Edmond has like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And some of those, like Broken Arrow never wanted to split it up because they didn't want to mess up sports and band. So they've kept that one huge school. When my younger brother went there 12 years later, they had 10th grade added in as well, and they didn't have enough classrooms for all the students, to where half of his classes were online most of the week because like they had too many kids in the school to try to actually put them in classes.
I thought you were going to say COVID.
Nope, it was before that. He's 28 now, so he was graduated from college when COVID happened.
Never mind then. You're not that young then.
No, I'm 40,
I
so
I I graduated the year before COVID happened, so man, real glad I dodged a bullet there. So
that
glad.
was teaching during COVID was interesting.
It must have been a hassle.
Definitely. And I was in Kansas for most of that, but like it was a lot.
Yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah, I remember some friends telling me that it was a bit of a hassle doing the schooling during that time. My cousin even got behind on some of her stuff because of COVID, and she's still trying to catch up now. So, yeah.
We were lucky in Kansas. Sounds like a lot of the schools in Oklahoma did like an A-B schedule where they went half the week to school and like did virtual the other half the week. But like where I taught, the kids had to wear masks,
Mm.
but they were in class. We went to school every day. And
Hmm.
like, so it was a normal school year, but with masks, which definitely, there were some different things that like made it more difficult than some of the previous school years.
Were there
But
some of
we
them who
were at
didn't
least
want to
able
wear
to be
masks?
in. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of kids who didn't want to wear a mask, and just a
I
lot
didn't want to
of.
wear a mask at first either, so
I mean, I didn't want to wear a mask, but I like did because it was what I was supposed to do.
yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
CDC's like, hey, this might prevent the disease from spreading more. So we don't have to deal with this. So,
especially like when I'm at work and my job says, like you are to wear masks
do you want to
in
keep your
class. I'm
job?
gonna
You
wear a
better
mask
do
because
it.
that's my job, and I'm gonna follow what my job says you're supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just, I was in college by that time, so well, I still am in college, but I was in college by that time, so luckily I didn't have to deal with that too much. Though we did have some Zoom calls. That was fun.
Yeah, I did. I taught seventh and eighth grade when all that went down.
Mm.
And I did like 2 Zooms a week with the seventh graders and 2 Zooms a week with the eighth graders, and like different. So I was teaching for like 4 hours a day via Zoom, 4 days a week from like March to May. That whenever everything shut down, I think in Oklahoma they just ended the school year in March,
Yeah,
but
something like that.
in Kansas, like we went,
Feels like so
like we
long
just
ago
did
now.
virtual for the rest of the school year, but like there was still school.
It feels like
What I
so long
heard from
ago now.
yeah, what I heard when I moved here was like, no, they just like it's March. All right, school year's over. So
Yeah, no, I just continued class on my computer on the internet. Then I got really depressed, and that really sucked. And then I kind of recuperated from that, and well, we've
yeah, COVID
slowly
was
come
really hard for
away
depression.
from the COVID. Still have friends who wear masks. I'm just like, don't. My parents are like, why are they doing that? I'm like, I don't give a shit. Be honest. Like, if that makes them feel any better, go nuts. If
Yeah,
only
I
more
mean,
people were like me. Just calm down. Don't worry about so much stuff that you can't control anyway.
oh, hi, Booger.
My cat is clawing at the door real quick. So
There is Booger.
oh, yep, I see her. She's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing over there? She's probably
Hi,
like,
Booger.
what's this? Who's this strange man on your screen? Yeah.
And Frankie is a small terrorist, and her brother. Her favorite thing to do is to annoy him,
Mm.
and he mostly just wants to sleep. Hush. Come here.
I love the dogs.
Booger, no.
It's a good name.
Hi, Booger.
Call him
Are
Boog
you
for
telling?
short.
So I mean, these aren't my dogs. They're one of my wife's really good friends' dogs.
Oh,
But I am watching them while she's out of town. But Booger and Frankie are their names. I do call him Boogs sometimes, but I don't know what his official nicknames are. Come on up,
fair
Booger.
enough.
Come on.
So,
Come on.
I am so kind of going back to your writing. So like, have you always been fascinated with the fantastic, or are you just kind of, is it something you? Because I hear a lot from other people that they were into it when they were kids and they fell away and then they got back into it.
So yeah, the funny thing is that like I read a lot of science fiction growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I love science fiction and read a lot of historical fiction as well.
Mm. Mm.
I don't know that I read that many of the like classic fantasy um, novels.
Mm.
Honestly, I still don't really like a lot of those whenever I've tried to. Like, to me, a lot of them are really
Interesting.
kind of
Interesting.
cringy. And I'm not talking like,
Well, what fantasy books did you read? I'm curious now.
well, so like I'm talking, this is like, if we're talking about, because I was born in 85.
Uh huh.
So the ones that I remember like trying to read whenever I was 10 to like 14 would have been some of the ones like from the 70s most likely. And I can't even really remember. None of them really stuck with me. I didn't make it very far. I think I tried to read some of those Terry Brooks ones.
Mm.
Um, and just they to me, I wasn't into it, but I love science fiction.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
Timothy Zahn was one of my favorite authors.
Oh yeah.
He
Quite
wrote the
the Thrawn
Thrawn
trilogy.
trilogy,
Yeah.
which is amazing. But like his non-Star Wars books are also awesome.
Yeah, I need to
Um,
check out his non-Star Wars stuff. I've only read the
he
original Thrawn trilogy
he has
years
one
ago.
called The Icarus Hunt. That was one of my favorite books. And he's written like 3 or 4 more books now in the series in like the last 2 years. And I've read I think 1 or 2 of those, and they were pretty good. Not as good as like the original one,
Mm-hmm.
but he had some really good ones. He had a few books that had some fantasy elements to them. It's not that I didn't like fantasy. I think I just gravitated towards science fiction and historical fiction. But honestly, a lot of the historical fiction is very similar to fantasy. The biggest difference being like some of them have a little bit more magic. But like I love King Arthur. King
Mm-hmm.
Arthur is fantasy
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to it because you've got sorcerers and wizards and all this kind of stuff.
Magic
It's set in
sword,
England, but it's fantasy.
Yeah, the Lady in the
Um,
Lake.
yeah, and so I definitely read more of like the historical books that they often did have a lot of fantastical elements, but I wasn't reading a lot of like currently being published fantasy. I mean, I read Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
I actually DNF'd the second book of Lord of the Rings when I was in high school. Um, and it was just like I loved Fellowship of the Ring. I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
great.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second book, it was just like they traveled and did something. They traveled back across Middle Earth and did something. They traveled back, and I just got really bored with it, and I put it down.
There's
And
a
I
lot of
didn't go back to
traveling
it
in
for
Lord of the Rings.
yeah, I didn't go back to it for several years. And then when I did finally finish it, it's a great series. I think I was talking about this on one of the shows the other day that I was hosting.
Were
But
like the other fans aghast at this
I think I
comparison?
liked The Hobbit more than
Yeah,
Lord of the
yeah.
Rings
I've heard a
because
couple
it
people
was
say
just
that.
it was more compact.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
and
very
Lord of the Rings,
straightforward
there's
story.
definitely a lot of stuff that like I think you could have kind of. I'm not going to tell Tolkien to cut a bunch of stuff out of his books because
Mm-hmm.
obviously he's a master, and like without him, most of the stuff that we're writing and reading doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, it was very slow paced.
Well, yeah.
Um, and I like a little bit more, like a little bit faster paced. I think I tend to gravitate toward the smaller struggles in books where like they are not saving the world from the ultimate evil,
Mm-hmm.
but like they're people who are that have to come together to like try to help other people they care about or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So like it's not the world ending conflicts. I like the sort of smaller scale stories. So like in my books, my characters are normal people. um, they are not the greatest heroes of the land. They are not like being commissioned by governments to save the world or anything like that. They're
Mm-hmm.
mostly kind of like the normal people and sort of side quest. A few people have called them side quest fantasy because they're not off hero's journey saving the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're smaller stories, but there's still conflict and there's still like, the things that are happening are important to the characters. But like in the first book, the two main characters are envoys, which are like messengers
Mm-hmm.
and they're going on a mission to
But they're
deliver.
envoys of chaos. Is this?
Yes, because I'm chaotic and so are my characters. Hi, shit booger. But basically, they're
Did
going
they
off on this
deliver
journey.
chaos to people?
What?
So did they deliver chaos to people?
I mean, so yes, there are two of them. You've got Corden and Jen,
Mm-hmm.
and Jen is a big sword wielding badass, and she just like she's a fighter, but she also loves animals and things like that. And then
Mm-hmm.
you've got Corden, who basically thinks he is the greatest, handsomest guy to ever exist, and he's like seducing all these different women throughout the kingdom and everything, always getting into trouble. He also thinks he's really, really clever and intelligent. He's really funny. Like he's always there with a witty remark, even if sometimes he's annoying the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
But they go off on this mission, but Jen is told by the people who gave them the mission that the mission's a sham. It doesn't actually matter. It's all kind of a fake thing because they're convinced Corden's a spy and they want her, even though she's his good friend, to like watch him and report back to see if he is um, doing anything to betray the nation.
Oh,
And
that's
so
interesting.
that is kind of the starting conflict. And then once they get out, they meet some other people along the way. That sort of it changes what the end like goal of the story is, because like it's not just the whole time they're on this mission and Jen is like, is he a spy? Is he not a spy? Because that would start to get a little bit like old after a little while if
Mm-hmm.
it's just that, to where it really becomes more of a like they meet together with some other people and they go on sort of a rescue mission of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
That involves a lot of mistake or like a lot of assumed identities and covers and trying to talk their way out of situations and battles and fights and everything, to where a lot of people have described it as kind of a Dungeons and Dragons kind of fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
because there is like um, a lot of sort of persuasion checks of sorts where like Corden tries to talk his way out of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then if it works, they don't have to fight. If it doesn't work, they do fight. But it's the kind of thing you don't need to know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, because it's just kind of influenced maybe by my playing Dungeons and Dragons, but it's not actually like this is a book about playing Dungeons and Dragons or
Uh-huh.
something like that. And then my second book, the novella, takes one of the side characters and does sort of a little prequel story about how he came to be where he is in the first book. And it's all of his trauma and um, depressing moments and like, murder and everything fun like that. So basically, my stories are never going to be like the ones where they are saving the world. It's going to be smaller scale stories, and I just think those are more fun. But like if we're talking about books that I love as fantasy books, have you ever read the Jarrig books or heard of them by Stephen Bruce?
I've heard of Stephen Bruce. Yeah, I haven't read
So
those books.
they're also called like the Vlad Taltos
Oh,
series. He's written like 17 of them now.
I think Tor put out one of his books
Yeah,
again
they're through
recently.
Tor. Yeah. The newer ones are through Tor, but like he's been writing those since the 80s. I started reading them later on,
Mm-hmm.
like in the 2000s, but I really liked them because they were kind of the main character is an assassin, but he's kind of a snarky assassin who has a snarky little like sort of mini dragon companion that talks to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
in this world where he is a human, but most of the people are these they're basically elves, but they're called a different name. And they kind of look down on the humans. But like if you kill somebody, they can be reanimated as long as you kill them in like a certain way. So like a lot of times the assassins are killing people, but it's really more of just like a warning because they can be like brought back from it. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's other ways where you can kill them and they can't come back from it, sort of thing. So it's a really interesting series. The books are like 250 pages. So it's a good like starting point for fantasy, I think, because it's not these 900-page tomes.
Yeah, they're not these epics like a Malazan or a
Yeah, and
Song of Ice and
I've never
Fire.
tried to read Malazan, and I don't think I ever will because it just doesn't
It
sound like
was
my
inspired by D&D, or well, technically GURPS. I don't want the Malazan
right. And I
fans
know it
getting pissed
is,
off at me in the comments.
but like it just my whole thing is that I like books where I can fall in love with the characters and enjoy the story and kind of have fun with it, especially like escapist kind of things. Like it doesn't have to be happy, but like I like books where you have characters that you can fall in love with. And Malazan, it just sounds like so much of it is like holy world building Batman, and then like you're not going to understand what any of this means until book 5. And I'm just like,
Holy world
I don't want to read that
building.
many books. I don't want to read 5 books to figure out what's going on. If it's
Holy
like
world building Batman. That's good.
that's like I
I like that.
I've read like the first 2 books of almost the first 2 books of Wheel of Time. And
uh,
I really liked the first book of Wheel of Time. And the second one was pretty good. I just kind of got to the point where I knew I wasn't going to read all 14.
yeah, I've never really been attracted to Wheel of Time, to be honest with you.
I
Just
mean,
never.
it's good, but also I'm not going to read a 14 book series. I Stormlight Archive.
That's why I
I
generally
have the
stick to
first book on
trilogies.
audiobook. It's just like it's so long.
That's why I generally stick to trilogies. I don't like reading those big series, With exceptions, of course. I do like A Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm hoping to start Malazan this year, so
Like
probably
Joe
next month.
Abercrombie's great.
Yeah, Joe
He
Abercrombie's
writes
good.
kind of in trilogies, but they're connected.
Yeah.
So
I've
it's
only
like
read the first Law trilogy and Best Served Cold.
I need to read the 3rd book of the first Law trilogy. I read the first 2, and I just read The Devils. I absolutely loved The Devils, but I also
Yeah, I've heard real mixed things about the Devils.
talking about like my own writing. I write books with a lot of wit, to where my favorite thing about Abercrombie is when he is funny, and I would say like The Devils is him at his funniest. And so if you're looking for the darkest, grim, dark story he can write, that's not it. I would make the case. People still call it grimdark because it's Abercrombie. I'd make the case that it's not grimdark. It's not. It's like it has some kind of a happy ending of sorts. And like I would say, you have a bunch of lovable characters who work together and have some success, and that's very different from your some of your First Law or the First Law world related Abercrombie, where the whole point is like a lot of these characters are not good people and everything turns out badly. So I really like The Devils. I think it's
a bit
it's my
light.
favorite Abercrombie I've read so far. But It's definitely going to be different based on the reader. I'm going to quickly close my blinds because I just noticed I have this.
Yeah, you're a little shiny. Looks a little. It kind of looks like you're in a cage. Yeah. All right.
All right. Booger, how do these blinds work? There we go. All right. There we go. I actually exist, and
There
I'm
you
not
go.
just a flash of light anymore.
So you're saying that like the Devil's is lighter than some of his other work?
It's lighter, and for me, I like that. Grimdark is hard for me because I really want to fall in love with the characters, and I don't need them to have a happy ending. But the endings where everyone dies or everyone's miserable.
Not a Shakespeare guy?
I mean, Shakespearean tragedy, I like his comedies better.
Okay.
Um,
Not a
I like his
Macbeth guy?
comedies a lot better. Some of his tragedies are great, but the amount of like everyone dies at the end, it's kind of silly.
Some hot takes right there.
I mean, it's kind of silly, and like I've read some grimdark books where like at the end everyone is either dead or like so miserable that they might as well be dead. And for me, my whole thing there is like, what's the point? Why did I read this? Like, sure, was the writing good? Yes. Were some of the characters interesting? Yes. But like, give me some hope somewhere here. Like, even just a shred
I'm
of
trying to
hope.
think of one of his comedies because I generally like his tragedies. I'm a sick, depraved
Midsummer Night's
man.
Dream. I teach that. I've taught that every year, the last like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I still need to.
Much to Do About Nothing is a really good one.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah.
Comedy of Errors is one of my favorites. It's kind of a one you don't see as often, but there's like these two. It's the whole like Prince and the Pauper thing where you have these two people who look exactly the same, and they switch lives, and there's like all of this crazy stuff that
and
happens.
Pandemonium ensues.
Yeah, so like his comedies are a lot of fun. Taming of the Shrew, which they made into 10 Things I Hate About You.
I was going to ask you about that because I have encountered Taming of the Shrew, but I'm like, it's fun, but it's kind of hasn't aged. Some of it hasn't aged well.
10 Things I Hate About You is a great version of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
like, great movie. Like the Shakespearean play, definitely. It's not one of his best, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
But and then like 12th Night, which is another really good one, they remade into She's the Man. If you've seen that, so like, basically, a lot of Shakespearean comedies have been made into good teen movies.
Just shows the applicability of Shakespeare.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that a lot of Shakespearean stories, he didn't make them up. He took them from the Italians, who took them from the Greeks, who took them from the Romans, who took them from the Greeks. And so, like, a lot of the stories are not new, but what he really did was he put his own sort of spin on them, and he was known for his writing ability. Booger, no.
She's an excitable one.
Come. Normally he just sleeps, but he's decided now that he has to go outside or something. But we just went outside, so we're not going to go outside right now. No, we're not. He's looking at me like, just you wait. We're going to go outside.
No. I was gonna say, I don't think so. I don't think some of his tragedies should be taken that seriously either. Like Hamlet's pretty funny, I think.
It's my favorite of his tragedies, and it's one where I feel like the characters really have a lot of depth to them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of his other ones, like, it's just kind of
not a
this
Scottish play guy.
An idiot. It's like Othello is a good play, but like Othello's big thing is he's just an idiot who listens to Iago and doesn't realize Iago's actually just like trying to ruin his life. And so Iago's like, "Hey, your wife's cheating on you," and he's like, "Oh," and he goes and strangles her without asking any questions. And then he's like, sad because he realizes, oh, she wasn't cheating on me. Well, that was dumb. I probably
Iago's
should
a
have
dick.
strangled her. I guess I'll kill myself. And it's like some of them, they're a little bit too simple because the person's an idiot. Hamlet is relatable. He's like a 20-year-old kid who is at college. He comes home. Basically, his mother's married to, the king who is his uncle, and his father is like, "Hey, he killed me. Avenge me." And he's like, "Bro, I'm just trying to like live my life and maybe like get a girlfriend. The last thing I need to do is like kill the king. And who's going to become the king if he kills the king? He's going to become the king." And he's just like, I don't want to deal with any of this. Just kind of let me be. And he waits too long his fatal flaw is that he just waits too long.
Mm-hmm.
He's too indecisive. And then by the time he finally decides he needs to act, he messes things up.
Everyone dies.
He waited too long and everyone dies. And it's like, for me, that one makes more sense because he's a relatable character who's just like, doesn't want to deal with all of this stuff that has been thrown on him. And
yeah, like I think Romeo and Juliet's meant to be a satire. It's like my conspiracy
I feel
theory.
like it is. It is not. Well, what I would say is, if there's a tragedy, it is not a tragedy that the lovers don't get together and that they die. The tragedy is that, like, because the families hate each other so much, their children die.
Yeah,
so I
agree with
that.
That.
It is not really a tragedy of love or a love story. It's more of a like hate between families leads to tragic consequences.
So really, you would say that Romeo and Juliet is a hate story, not a love story.
Yes, absolutely.
I couldn't.
And the thing is, like, with a lot of Shakespeare, they are one of the reasons that some of those ones have stayed so popular is just because the stories are kind of timeless. And so you can take the story and make a teen movie out of it and it's still good. Or take the story, change up some things, make The Lion King and it's still good.
Yeah.
And like, it's kind of like, it's not like you have to
Except,
keep
Simba
aspect,
doesn't have a whole fake play to make Scar feel bad about what he did.
Yeah,
like
I mean, that would
Hamlet.
be awesome if they did.
That would have been pretty dope,
I need
though.
that, actually, the Lion King fake play version.
That would have been pretty fun. And Scar's like, what the hell is this?
Timon and Pumbaa.
That would have been funny, actually. Like... I would have liked to see that. Dang it. Yeah. No,
but, like, I think there's a reason why Shakespeare is so famous. Partially, it's because his way of writing. He was a really good poet.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great turn of phrase, but also like some of those stories were the kind of thing that you were like, okay, these are really good stories. A lot of which he took from other people earlier on because they were really good stories that had lasted from Greek times to the 1600s, and so it makes sense that they've lasted to now because they're sort of timeless stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, would you say you're not a fan of the Scottish play? Because that play gets pretty dark and weird.
That's one of the ones
but
where...
I love it because of that. So, I mean,
it is, like, it is a good play. I get frustrated because, like, Macbeth is kind of an idiot. And he's just, like, does whatever his wife tells him to do and just, like...
Then he goes crazy and starts just murdering everyone.
To your crazy wife. And, like... So it's one of those ones where, and King Lear's kind of the same way.
Oh, I like King Lear. Isn't that one of his comedies as well, or is that a tragedy? Yeah.
King Lear is the one where, like, he is the old king who splits his kingdom up between the two daughters who immediately, like, he's such an idiot that you really can't feel sorry for him, and I don't think you're really supposed to.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're not supposed to feel sorry for King Lear. You're supposed to go, like, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah. And so, like, for some of those, sometimes when they're so stupid like that,
it's hard to empathize.
You can't really empathize with this guy, like, who's so stupid. Like, his daughter's like, bro, don't listen to the other two daughters. They're lying to you. And he's like, no, they're the only ones who love me. You hate me. They get the kingdom. And they're like, all right, get out. We're going to kill you then.
And he basically goes crazy and starts just, walking around and ranting.
And like the
So
best
funny.
part about that is the fool is the one character who's wise,
Yeah.
but no one listens to him because he's the fool.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of irony I love, where like if they just listened to someone, then they would be able to fix things. So like in Greek mythology, with the Trojan War, Cassandra was the woman who was able to like be a soothsayer, and she could tell what was going to happen, but she was cursed that no one would ever believe her.
So that's where that Cassandra truth comes from. I see.
Yeah, like the Trojan horse, there was the whole thing where like she's like, don't bring the Trojan horse into the city. It's not good. And they're like, silly woman. Shh. And they take the horse in, and then of course they all die. But the thing is,
are you saying you're not a fan of the Iliad because
I love it.
The people are idiots?
I mean, sure, they are idiots.
Like, oh look,
because
a horse.
Think about the reason the whole Trojan War happens is because Menelaus is sad that his wife left him.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, to be fair, though,
greatest war in the history of I
was about to say, to be fair, though, wars have been started for similar reasons.
Yeah.
So that's not completely off the beaten path, is what I'm getting.
Just like this huge war because he's sad his wife left him. So like a lot of that's a story where part of the whole thing is supposed to be kind of a tragedy of this war has started. All of these, like, the gods are kind of playing with the lives of mortals, and it's cool. And I like the Iliad. I like the Odyssey. I teach the Odyssey.
I was about to say I like the Odyssey more, but I appreciate the Iliad.
Better. It's a quest story.
Well, yeah.
And a journey. Whereas the Iliad's more of like, here's this long story about the battles.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's cool too, but, I like the
It's pretty long for what it is. Like, the Iliad could be shorter and get across what it needs to get across in terms of, like, the story. It's more of, like, the Iliad is more important for, like, the lore and the mythology aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas I think the Odyssey is a more interesting, exciting story.
Oh, yeah, it was, I always think, because, like, those have originally started out as, like, oral stories. I'm like, good Lord, imagine reciting all of that to people.
Yeah, and
probably not all the words that Homer wrote down, but, like, good Lord.
Homer never wrote anything down.
Oh, he didn't?
Because it wasn't written down for centuries after Homer was dead. So, like, whenever we say that Homer wrote them, there was a bearded, blind bard named Homer who was famous for telling these stories, but they weren't written down for centuries afterward, to where, like, there are probably things added in that other people added in throughout the centuries after that. There's a famous part in the poem where Odysseus is eating with King Alcinous, and a blind bard is singing stories of Troy, and Odysseus cries to hear the stories. And it's basically like, that's what the Iliad is. Is that Homer singing the Iliad to them? There's like a little
little meta element in there.
But honestly, it probably isn't
like
a
Hamlet.
self-insert. It's probably something that someone added after Homer's death at some point while they were retelling the story to kind of give a little shout out to him. So the same with, like, a lot of those oral stories, that the written version, it's really impossible to know if that written version is correct to the original source material. It's just whenever someone finally decided to write it down, that's the version they wrote down. And they could have added in some new things that they added on the spot, or things that other people added over years of telling. It's just kind of like there were no video cameras to video Homer and then give a transcription of it.
Yeah. Ripping yarn, though, that Odyssey. I remember reading it in high school, and I was like, man, yeah, all right.
It's a
They should
really good
teach
one.
more stuff like this.
It's one that I feel like more people would like if they read the prose version. So if you get a prose translation, it's written into paragraphs and everything like that. For
Oh my
our
God, it's
brains that
greatest.
struggle reading the verse, it's the same words, but just
You'd be like, oh my
written
gosh, this is the
into
greatest
prose.
fantasy novel ever.
And it's easier to read, at least for me.
Yeah,
It is
that's
easier
true.
to read it in paragraphs than in verse.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, poetry can be. I find poetry's better when it's spoken out loud, which kind of going back to the oral thing we were talking about earlier.
Well, poetry's meant to be read aloud. Like,
Yeah.
the
So,
whole
like, when you
thing,
read
like,
it, you're just kind of like, all right, yeah.
there are maybe
Doesn't feel the
some
same.
more modern poets that wrote things to be seen, like on the page, a little bit more. But if we're talking about like poetry up until really the 19th century, and even to some extent later than that, was all written to be heard. Because a lot of people could not read. And so, like, now, what the biggest thing that we have now that is poetry is songs. Songs are just poetry put to music, which a lot of poetry was put to music. So one of the things whenever I teach poetry to my students, and they're all like, "I hate poetry," and I'm like, "Do you hate music?" And
Yeah, I
they're
was
like,
about to say,
"No."
but do
Like,
you like music?
do you like song lyrics? Yeah, that's poetry. It's just you're used to hearing it aloud, like sung, and it's not something that you just like stared at on a page and tried to get that, like, the lyricalness of it yourself. Someone sang it to you. But song lyrics are poetry.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's just now we have, like, music and stuff. Well, they had music back then.
They had music, and a lot of times the
I
poetry
was like, well, they had music back then. That was a
it was
point.
recited or even sung to music.
Man,
But
imagine
when we
singing the
look
Odyssey.
at
That would be. I
the
bet that would
Odyssey,
be.
there might have been like a lute or something being strummed. That probably wasn't sung, it was recited. But like some of the poetry would have been sung with instruments. But now when we see a poem from like 14th century Italy, it's just words on a page, because we don't have a recording of the actual performance. Whereas, like, if you just saw song lyrics on a page, it would be a lot different than hearing them. So I think that if we went back and actually heard a lot of those things being performed when they were actually written and those people were alive, we'd have a totally
Be
different
like,
view
oh,
of a
yeah.
lot of that stuff. And it's just because, like, we're very much a visual and auditory society, and looking at words on a page for a lot of people, it's really hard to envision them. But then you have a lot of readers who like love words on a page. But poetry's hard even for a lot of people who love to read books, because we're just so used to anything in verse being in song format now.
Yeah, thing that kind of irritates me about how English teachers teach like Shakespeare or whatnot. I'm like, it's meant to be performed. It's not meant to
Oh,
be
I always
read.
perform it. I make the kids get up in front of the class and we read it and we perform it.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Some of the kids love it, some of the kids hate it, but I think it's a lot more fun than just like sitting at desks and reading it.
Yeah, no, I'm like, it should be performed. It shouldn't be read.
And I think it does really, like, reading Midsummer Night's Dream, a lot of the language can be hard for the kids, but if they're doing some of the like the actions and things like that as it's going, they can kind of get a better idea of like the scene and what is happening. So it's not just like this person talks for half a page, this person talks, but it's like they are actually, so I'll give stage directions and like, all right, and he punches him in the face. He pushes him down and tries to stab him with a sword. And so like the kids then do that sort of kind of the choreography moments. My favorite one is whenever, so if you've got like a guy, a girl and a boy, and like there's a hug scene or something like that, they're like, but if you got like two guys and you're like, and then they kiss, they're like, can I kiss him? Like in class, and you're like, whatever. And then
We've
if it's
grown
two
a lot as
girls,
a
they'll do the
society.
same thing. It's like if it's their friend, they're like, can we hold hands or whatever? But if it's like some like a guy and a girl who maybe like they look at each other like, I can barely speak to you. But then like, so it's really funny because they're very awkward, but they're also goofy and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's I enjoy I enjoy Shakespeare quite a bit. Like it's kind of funny. It was really a theater class where like finally a teacher was like, "Oh, this is what he was doing," and it was like red pilled. I was like, "Whoa!" Like really, you know. This makes so much
Yeah,
more sense now.
definitely.
Yeah,
I zoned out for just a second. I
was
do
talking
that
about I was talking about getting
sometimes.
I was talking about getting red pilled on Shakespeare.
So I'm kind of old. Red pill and blue pill. Blue pill is like good. Red pill is bad.
I think if I recall right, I think it's red pill that like frees you in the Matrix. It's
Oh,
from the
okay.
Matrix.
Right. Yeah. I was like, I mean, I've seen The Matrix, but it's been quite a while, and I know people use it where they'll say like, people use it now for like red pill is like the negative consequence or whatever.
Yeah, it's because a lot of conspiracy nuts have taken it over.
Yeah, and like
Probably.
I normally when I see things like that, I'm like, scroll on, ignore.
Yeah, no. But yeah, no. Shakespeare's fun. Though I like Macbeth. I like the weird, dark energy from it. One of my favorite anecdotes about like Tolkien is apparently he created the tree people because he was disappointed that in Macbeth the trees didn't actually move.
One of my favorite Tolkien. It's like I've taught The Hobbit before in my honors
Oh yeah,
classes.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's a not bad book to teach. It's not
no,
as it's
the
not
biggest
as
thing that happens is that the kids get kind of bored in the middle
oh yeah.
because there's a slow part
Yeah,
where
and
they
then
are
Tom
sort of like
Bombadil shows up.
traveling and traveling and traveling. Um, and but like one of the coolest things with what he did was he came up with this whole idea for this thing called the U catastrophe, which is catastrophe, but you put an EU in front of it, and it means a good catastrophe.
Huh.
So really, it
Okay.
is the idea of something good that comes out of nowhere to save the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, like in The Hobbit, what happens is like Smaug is going to decimate everyone, and really, no one's going to defeat Smaug. And then Tolkien's like, well, actually, there's this guy named Bard. And Bard, you see, he could speak the language of the birds. And the birds told him about this one little weak spot on the dragon, and he shot Smaug in that one little spot, and Smaug died.
So like an
Um,
Achilles heel.
yeah, so it's kind of one of those things where like Bard has been mentioned once before this and really isn't important to the
God.
story. But for Tolkien, he brings in basically a good catastrophe out of nowhere to save the day in a situation that really is not ever going to be fixed otherwise. You could say the same thing with like the Eagles coming to save
Yeah.
them, where it's like, how will we be saved? Oh, by the way, there are eagles who fly down. Like,
And
and
everyone's
so
wondered since then why the hell they didn't just take the Eagles to Mountain Doom and drop
and so
drop
it's
it
one
in
of those
there.
things where like for Tolkien, like if we're looking at it now from the perspective of like a writer now or a reader now, you're like, well, that kind of happens out of nowhere. You know, we need a little bit more to like lead up to that. But Tolkien really like he took that idea, and it was something that like happened a lot in folklore and older stories where there would be kind of like a like, and by the way, here's this thing that actually hadn't been mentioned before that completely changes everything.
Yeah.
And so I really thought that was interesting how he had a lot of little things like that. He did a lot of research, like, you know, he did all of the different languages
Yeah.
and like all of the songs,
Yeah.
which like for a modern reader, do the songs add much? Not really, but they add to the feel of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him, he was writing those to really like, I think, to give a real feeling for the world as you're going, like to show like what the characters were like, what the world was like. And now we're like, well, why do we need to read this song? Let's get to the story. And
I
it's
wonder
just a
what they thought
different
of Tom
type
Bombadil.
of storytelling. Like Tom Bombadil, oh man, he sings a lot.
Yeah, he's a bit of a whimsical
And
character.
like, do any of those songs like do they have a huge like bearing on the plot? Not really. But they're there for like character development and world building aspects. And
And
so
like,
like,
hey, here's this weird character, Tom Bombadil. Check him out.
yeah. And so I think a lot of that, if you're looking at it from a modern perspective, you're going to be looking at that like, well, why is this happening? This isn't like moving the story forward. But I don't think Tolkien was really worried about that. He was just like, here's this guy, and he's a little kooky, and I'm gonna, you know, show him for this next little part. Because a lot of early fiction, the classics, they would have a lot of these kind of they'd be going along, and then they would digress into something really different for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that a lot of early novels from the 17 and 1800s would have would be they'd be going along and they'd meet a character somewhere, and that person would then like tell their life story over 50 pages. And so you just be like, the main story would just be put on hold while this other person told their story. And part of that folklore, folk tales, there are a lot of things like that where they meet a character who then imparts to them their story, and then that it will often connect back to the main character's story as they go forward. But like there was a lot less of an emphasis in a lot of classic literature on like pushing the plot forward. And I think now when a lot of us are reading, that's the thing we're like, let's get something to happen. Like, why? Like, let's push things forward. Like, I want to learn something new about these new characters. Why are they singing another song? And it's just a different style of plot and narrative, which Tolkien definitely was not writing modern fantasy. He was
No,
really
definitely
by a
not.
lot of like classics from pre-19th century.
Yeah, I was going to say he was
folklore.
emulating like legends and myths, like Beowulf and
Yeah, and those are full of digressions and parts that just like completely ignore what's happening for a while. So like for him,
Beowulf's kind of funny because it's just like, oh, here's this big burly man called Beowulf who punches monsters in the face and kills things and kills Grendel, kills his mom, and then there's a random dragon who shows up. You're like, where did the dragon come from? Why is the dragon here? Don't know.
because Beowulf needed, so basically that part most people feel like was added on later because they told the part with Grendel and they were like, we need a little bit more. Like, let's get the sequel of sorts. And so you add in like here's a little bit more to show like another adventure. Because a lot of times, like that's another example of one that was told orally.
Yes,
So
that's true.
like the part what's written down is what someone wrote down hundreds of years later. So a lot of things would have been added in over time to the story, to where like the original story was probably just about Grendel and his mom, maybe just about Grendel, and then they add the mom, and then like from there you move on. But it's interesting to see like how those stories change over time.
Indeed. Beowulf was also a one I read in high school that I liked.
Did you read the middle, the Old English version?
I've read the Heaney version.
Because like that's one.
I'm sorry if that
When
doesn't
I was
help
in
you.
high school, we read mostly a modern translation and read a few parts of the Middle English. But
Yeah,
I
Middle
know
English
that
is
some
strange.
schools read the Middle English version.
Interesting.
And maybe I guess it's actually Old English. They read the Old English version and then like look at the translation, and they're like Shakespeare's one thing,
Well, that's modern
but like
English.
that's at least that is modern. That is still English, and it's just like some of the phrases are different and some of the words are no longer used.
Mm-hmm.
But like Beowulf in its original text is really hard unless you like study those things.
Unless
And
you're
I've
like
taken
Philip Chase.
classes on like the history of English language. I took a master's class in that, and it was really interesting. And I learned some Middle English and some Old English, and like it was a really interesting class. But it's not the kind of thing like as a high school student you're going to be like, this makes so much sense in this book that's written in a completely different dialect than what, or different language than what I speak.
Yeah, right. You kind of have to. Hopefully, he doesn't appear while we're doing this. But I don't know if you how much BookTube you watch, but Dr. Philip Chase is a big fan of Beowulf, and he can actually speak. I think it's Middle English that he can
Right.
speak.
I've seen his show a few times. I've seen an interview with him. I am good friends with Bill Adams, who was Bill and Dewey. Their book was Philip Chase's, his like SPFBO
Oh.
group's finalists that went forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I saw that they had a live with him after that where they talked about all things. And I've seen that one. But I don't know if I've ever really watched his channel, but I've seen
So
him on a few things.
I see. I see. But he has a lot of thoughts on Beowulf, though. So Beowulf's something that interests you, which
I
clearly it
haven't
kind
read
of
Beowulf
does.
since I was a undergraduate,
It's
but
fair.
I liked it when I read it.
Yeah, you're like, okay, so how come these like modern fantasy novels aren't like looked at, but this is like high literature, you know? That makes
Did
sense.
you say that part again? I didn't quite hear
Oh,
you.
I was like, well, it kind of makes you think, like, there's some of these good fantasy novels out here you can teach. Like, why are those considered, entertainment? This is,
I mean,
I mean, Shakespeare was popular entertainment in his time.
the thing is, yeah, Shakespeare, Beowulf, all these things, they were entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
The people of the time were not going and saying, "Oh, this is a classic. We should go and listen to this because it's a classic of literature." It was a situation of they were like,
Want to
"Hey,
go to
you
the
want to go
play?
watch the new Shakespeare play? Hey, you going to want to go watch the new like the Bard perform their new poems?"
Yeah, or
It's kind of like,
hey,
"Hey,
you
you
want to
want to go to the
go to the
movies? You
new
want to go
play?
to that concert?"
Oh,
So
exactly.
like
Yeah.
they were like it was
You want to
entertainment.
go to a pub and listen to the guy over there?
Yeah. I mean, it was entertainment. And then what happened was it was popular and it stood the test of time. And then over time, people remembered it and started studying it. But when it was being written, it was popular entertainment.
Yeah, I was about to
And
say it
Shakespeare
probably
was
wasn't taken
famous for
seriously.
being really good with language, but it was still entertainment that people went and watched.
Yeah, I had a friend who compared him to James Cameron once, which I was like, that's not a bad comparison, I guess.
I mean, it's kind of the
I don't know
same.
if I
Like
want
if
to
you have
inflate that
a
man's
director
ego
right
more than
now
it
who's
already has been,
really,
but all right, Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
oh, you're good. Basically, I think that the James Cameron thing makes sense because, like, if you have a director who's really popular and kind of known for being sort of a visionary, some of those movies might still be watched um, in 100 years or something like that, and then it would be a classic. And we'll have to see. Like, movies are still such a new thing compared to a lot of these other things, but like if there are movies that are still being watched in 500 years, that's kind of like your Shakespeare sorts. Like,
I mean, my favorite book of all time, at least right now, could always change. I try to be aware of that, but my favorite book is The Great Gatsby. I was one of those weird kids. I read a lot of the like books they made you read in high school. Like I read them, before anyone taught them to me, because I don't know. I was like, I want to see what all this is about. I really love The Great Gatsby though.
Great Gatsby is a good one. I read all of the classics mostly in middle school before I even
Oh
went
yeah.
to high school, and
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone
um,
in that. I feel so
so
seen now because I
I
thought I
mean,
was
yeah,
weird for
like I
doing
said,
that.
like my dad's a professor.
Oh, that makes
Um,
sense.
my dad's a history professor, and like
Dad just like
we
had like
were
The Great
always
Gatsby laying
like
out. Like, here you go,
books. My
son.
mom read to us from a really early age, so like books were always the thing. So
Mm-hmm.
like I was reading so much. Like I played sports and I read books. Um, and like my favorite book is The Count of Monte Cristo,
Mm.
which to me it is the greatest
Also
plot.
entertainment.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those ones that like it was written to be entertainment.
Mm.
Alexander Dumas and like the Three Musketeers as well, he was a popular author.
Yeah.
He was not trying to write literary masterpieces. He was trying to write good stories.
That capital
And
L
they stood the
literature.
test of time because they were great stories.
Yeah, that he
Um,
wasn't writing that capital L literature, as they
no,
say.
he was not writing literature. Um, and like F. Scott Fitzgerald, I mean, he was writing literature to an extent, like with The Great Gatsby and some of his other books,
Mm-hmm.
but he was writing in a more accessible way than some people. And so, like, The Great Gatsby is one of those books that um, you kind of have to get the flow of the frame narrative.
Mm.
But after that, it's not a hard book to read in terms of like
It's not
the
very long
prose
either.
and the characters. The biggest struggle a lot of people are going to have there is like it's one of those examples of the narrator of the book really doesn't matter. He is there kind of to be a chronicler of Gatsby and Daisy, some of the other kids. So like he matters to some extent. I'm not saying he doesn't matter at all,
No, I mean
but
I'm not
it's a
disagreeing with you.
style of writing where you have like a first person narrator who is not really the main character because it's a book about Gatsby. But by having someone else be the narrator and not Gatsby, you're able to give Gatsby a little bit of a like mysterious quality to him. If Gatsby is your narrator and you're in his head, all of the stuff that's mysterious immediately
Yeah,
is not really that
evaporates.
mysterious anymore. Yeah. So you could do it third person, but I think it works really well to have like a first person narrator. Um, and then but like Gatsby is the larger than life main character
Mm-hmm.
that the narrator is interacting with because it gives us a way of like seeing Gatsby, but he's kept at an arm's length
Yeah,
so that the mystery is intact.
one of the things I really like about Gatsby in particular is that like it's almost like Nick, who's he's the narrator basically. He's almost like he's creating like a myth in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. He's creating a story. He's evoking a time, if you will. He's mythologizing an era, if you will.
Yep, and it's great because
And there's people who are like, the language is too flowery, and I'm like,
it's
it's
really
like
not.
it's not, but I mean, it's evocative,
Mm-hmm.
But he's doing that for a purpose. There's a purpose to it. He's creating a myth, basically.
And the first time I read it was in high school, and I thought it was a fine book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read it again in a graduate school creative writing seminar where we read it for like the plot structure and the craft, and I was like, this book is freaking amazing. And I think it's one of those that when you look at how he crafts everything, it's masterful. Um, if you're reading it as a kid and you're just like looking for a story, I think it does have a good story, but you
Oh,
might
sure.
be
I mean,
kind of like,
I remember just being blown away, like, whoa, I didn't know someone could write like that,
Mhm. And whenever all the stuff comes out about Gatsby later on in the book, that was a really like a bombshell of like, he is not this like, I love it whenever someone has these high expectations and like sort of a like someone is a myth or a legend or larger than life for them,
Uh-huh.
and it all comes crashing down because they're just a person.
Yeah.
And so I think Gatsby does a really good job of kind of that, where he is not a myth or a
Yeah, like
legend.
how he meets him in the book is very inconspicuous. He's just like, "Oh, hey, I'm Gatsby." And he's like, "Oh, well, okay."
But he's also just like, Nick is kind of a, you know, kid who doesn't really know what's going on, and he's just like, he's so rich and glamorous, and I wish I could be like them. And so like for him, he's just like looking at this world around him as if it's so wondrous.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy that, where you have like the naive character who kind of realizes by the end that things are not anything like what they imagined they would be.
Yeah, I like that too. I also like that, I identify with that like sense of disappointment and disillusionment by the end of the book.
Yeah, and I think that's a good example. Like I talked about how, in general, I'm a fan of books that don't have just like super depressing endings, and I
Mm-hmm.
want there to be some hope and maybe more of like a bittersweet type ending. Um, but I think that's a great example of a book where it ends kind of the way that I think it needs to end,
Mm-hmm.
and it ends with like Nick at the end is a different person than he was at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some character growth on his part. And he's probably going to be a little bit more of a jaded person moving forward, disillusioned, depressed, and not going around being like, rich people are so cool. I wish I could be like them. And so, in a way, he might actually make something of himself better than what he would if
I
he
don't
just
know.
like.
Did he ever really feel that way? Because I always got the sense he was always disdainful of the Buchanans.
Well, but he loved Gatsby.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I think him seeing Gatsby fall was kind of like a, you know, he just was disillusioned about that whole thing. Um, and just kind of depressed and hopefully less naive moving forward.
That's a good
Trying to
point.
remember, does is his name is Tom,
Yeah.
Daisy's husband? Does he die too?
No, he does not.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
I'm trying. Like I didn't think so, but also I was sitting here like, does he die? I can't remember. It's been a while.
his mistress does though. She gets ran
Yeah, I
over
knew
by the
that.
car. I remember. Um, oh man, I do like. I think the '74 movie is a lot better than the Baz Luhrmann movie with Leonardo DiCaprio.
I don't think I've seen either of them.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay, never mind
No.
then.
Um, but a bad Leonardo DiCaprio movie, the Romeo and Juliet one.
Oh my god. Oh. Oh.
I get what they were trying to do. I just don't think it worked.
Oh my god.
Had a great soundtrack though.
Yeah. 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 You know, when I watch movies from the guy who made the Romeo and Juliet movie in the 90s, it's almost like I went to a really crazy party. And you know, you get swept up in it. Kind of like Gatsby's parties in a way. You get really freaking intoxicated, and then you wake up the next morning, you have no idea what happened, and there's like somebody on the ground who's like half naked and kind of he might have pissed himself, and you're like, what happened? That's kind of what it feels like watching the Romeo and Juliet movie from the 90s.
I mean, I think that's a pretty good description of it.
Now you might think
Like
that's
an
real specific,
alcohol-induced
Britton,
fever dream.
but like it's what it feels like. It feels like you went to a really crazy party.
I think the part of that movie that just like I remember laughing was whenever they're talking about their swords and they just got 9mm Glocks and
Yeah.
they're like sideways pointing them at each other, and it's just like,
I
oh my god.
I think the part that made me laugh is that I bite my thumb at you, sir, and he's literally like screaming it at the other guy, and you're like, dude, like calm down. Like it's not that big of a deal. Though, speaking of high schoolers being silly, like some things we would do, some of my friends and I would do, we would bite our thumbs at each other when, you know, and like I
Did
bite
you
my thumb
spit
at you,
though?
sir. I don't spit at them because
Well, no, because like I know one of the things that I learned in high school with that was like when they bit their thumb, they would then spit on the ground after biting the thumb. So it was kind of like a even more sort of derogatory gesture.
yeah. I don't really like the '90s version of Romeo and Juliet, though.
It was not very good.
So like, oh my god, it's like, bro, calm down. Like she like starts freaking out and pulls a gun on herself. I'm like, bro, hold on a minute, hold on a minute.
I did see a version of Hamlet from like
Now I do like
2000
the
with
moment when he kills Tybalt in the '90s movie. I like how
right.
Leo played that.
There's a version of Hamlet from like 2000 with Ethan Hawke as Hamlet and Bill Murray as Polonius,
Oh
and
no.
like they have guns in that one, and it honestly worked really well. But it was very much played like super serious.
Oh.
And I saw it at OSU. Like OSU had this thing called Unseen Cinema,
Mm.
where they would have like indie films or foreign films or kind of artistic films that never made it into movie theaters, but that some of the like professors or film staff thought were really good, and they'd
Mm.
play them at the student union every now and then. And that was one of the ones that was one of those. And my brother and I, my older brother, and I would sometimes go to those. And that was one. It was actually a really good um, version of
I
Hamlet.
was about to say,
But
when I
like,
think of Hamlet adaptations, I think of the Branagh version.
I mean, it's better than the Mel Gibson version.
There's a Mel Gibson version?
The Mel Gibson version is like completely bastardized and like cuts out a bunch of parts and like changes things around, and like
Oh jeez.
it's
I can't imagine Hamlet or I can't imagine Mel Gibson doing To Be or Not to Be speech.
he was indeed Hamlet, yes,
Oh my
and it was not
god.
very good.
Oh my
The
god.
Branagh version is much better.
Yeah, I like the Branagh version because you can tell he really appreciates the material. And also got
Yeah,
Brian Blessed. Can't go wrong there.
oh, Frankie.
Though, yeah, I enjoy that movie.
Well, I think I have about 10 more minutes before I've got to head
Oh,
out.
okay. Yeah.
I've got to drive back to my house because to do some stuff before I actually go to bed.
That's
Um,
cool. We can wrap it up in 10 minutes. I'm sure we could do that, or maybe a little sooner than that. We'll see. But
okay.
when you need to get moving, just let me know and I'll wrap
All
up.
right.
So I will ask, what are you hoping to do next?
So I'm currently writing book 2. It's kind of a slow process because sort of burnt out. And like I just released a novella, so sort of that post-release burnout
Mm-hmm.
and everything like that is kind of hitting. I am starting a secret project, which is going to be a little bit more sci-fi related, just to kind of like write something fun to get my creative juices flowing again a little. Um, so I'm going to be working on both of those this summer. Um, and then from there, just continuing to try to publish some books. And like, I mean, I've had some really good feedback from some people. I've managed to get my book into some people's hands, and a lot of people have really enjoyed them. So, feeling pretty good about that. And just kind of, I have a few fans, which is always nice. Like when you have people who are like excited to read everything that you write, that's always pretty cool. But yeah, just writing um, and going from there. I kind of try to take it one book at a time. I know some people have like the 14 book series they know they're going to write, and I'm just kind of like, my series might be 3, it might be 4. Um, like they're all sort of standalone-ish in terms of
Mm.
like they follow the same characters, and like book 1 kind of ends with a lead into what could be the plot of book 2, but it's not like, it's basically semi wrapped up for in some ways at the end of book 1, and then a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a lead in. So like each one's kind of a complete story. I don't have like a bunch of cliffhangers at the end where it's like
I see.
they're about to die and it's like you've got to wait till the next book comes out to see if they're still alive.
Yeah, I don't
Because I
know.
hate that in TV shows whenever they do the cliffhanger. Or like, I know I haven't read the newest Fourth Wing book, but my wife has read all of those, and I've read the first 2 because she was on me to get those read. And I've heard the third one ends on a cliffhanger, and everyone's mad about it because they have to wait for the next book. And for me, I hate that because I'd rather not have to like wait around to find out what happens. I'd rather like have each book have some sort of, it doesn't have to be the end of everything, but
Mm-hmm.
I like it better when like books in a series sort of wrap up the conflict of that book.
You may like the Gentleman Bastard books. There's only
Oh, I
3.
love those. Those
Oh,
are some of my
I
favorites.
was about to say they're
Yeah.
very similar in that way.
And like, I'm not even upset. Like, I'm not that worried if he never writes another book
Well, the third
because
book was kind of a letdown, so I
the
hope.
third book was not as good as the
I was about to
others.
say, so
But
I hope he writes the fourth one, so I can be like, this
I
is
mean, I'd
better.
love him to, but at the same time, like it's not like it doesn't have an ending because they're like, sure, book 2 sort of has
I also
a
kind of want to see the showdown, the rematch between the Falconer and Locke, but
yeah.
I won't.
Um, book 2 sort of has a cliffhanger of sorts
Little
about like
bit.
knowing if he's gonna make it, but the main story is resolved there. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like those books are sort of standalone
Mm-hmm.
with things that lead them on. Another, like, I love Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames.
Mm. I
Those are
have those. I haven't
fantastic.
read them yet.
They're a lot of fun. And then I like Michael J. Sullivan's Riria Revelation series.
Oh, I've heard those are kind of like Locke Lamora, the Locke Lamora books.
So they're definitely not as dark, but
Mm.
you've got the 2, Royce and Hadrian, who are, they work together. They're very kind of, they banter back and forth a lot. Those, like Kings of the Wild, that Loch Lamora, to some extent, are the ones that I usually like talk about, kind of related to my book, because some similar type vibes.
You
Even
know what?
mine's
I might
definitely
like
not
your
as
books
dark as
then.
Loch Lamora.
You know what? I might
But
like your books then, if that's the case, because I enjoy
I
those.
mean, it's definitely not as dark as Loch Lamora, and probably more like a Michael J. Sullivan, but
I
sort
need
of
to
the same.
read
Like,
those Michael J. Sullivan books at some
they're
point.
really fun. What I would say is that there's definitely some parts where you're kind of like, these guys are like doing a lot of the "as you know, Bob" dialect, where they're like, well, "What were you doing for the last 10 years?" "Well, as you know, I've been doing what?" Like, there's some things like that that are a little bit like eye roll
We're like,
worthy.
okay, I see what you're doing. All right.
But the characters are really fun and the stories are fun. And for those, each one is kind of like, there is the overarching plot,
Mm-hmm.
but each one has like the story of that book, which is wrapped up by the end of that book. And then there's the threads that move it forward. And for me, with a series, that's what I like, because you don't have to be like, I'm not going to know what happens at all unless I read this entire 9-book series.
Oh, you might like my stuff when I put it out, because that's what I'm hoping to do with my fantasy. Because I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to do a like 900-page Sandersonian thing. You know, as fun as they can be. You know, I don't. I want to do something smaller. You know. But anyway.
Smaller is, I think smaller is better when you're getting started out too,
Yeah.
because um, especially if you're doing the indie route, like what I've heard, and like my book is 400 pages,
Oh, okay, that's not bad.
so not that bad. But like some people I know have been like, if you're indie and you publish like your first book is 800 pages, it's hard to get a lot of people to trust an author they really haven't read anything from before to, like, make that work. Sanderson, with his like Stormlight Archive, for the first like 60% of the book, nothing's really happening except like a bunch of world building stuff, and then he has a Sanderlanche type thing.
So he has a bunch of those, as you know, kind of.
Yeah. Well, but like basically with all of that, people are willing to give him the time, because he has a track record of nailing the ending. And if you are nobody make nobody face new indie author, and
New
you
indie
publish your
author guy.
900-page book, and you're like, the first 300 pages really are all just setting up the world. Once you get to page 600, things really kick off. You're going to struggle to have a lot of readers, because they're not going to be like, I can trust this person.
I hate that.
They've never read anything about it. You're new.
I hate those. Wait till book 3 and then it gets real good. I'm just like, oh my god.
Well, there's a like in Dungeon Crawler Carl, I love those audiobooks. They're a lot of fun. The books themselves are okay. They're so much better on audio. And so if you're not an audiobook person, like, they're honestly just kind of okay, what I would say. But like, he really upped his game as the series went on. So like, if you like the first 2 or 3 books, when you hit the later ones, they are fantastic.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to get through, and if you don't like the first few books, it's probably not for you, and it's just kind of like, move on. Malazan, I've heard like, well, books 2 and 3 and 4 are hard, but once you get to book 5, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm never going to get to book 5. So good to hear. Moving on.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to hold you hostage, and also I am getting hungry, so that actually ends on a. So it actually is pretty convenient that you wanted to leave soon. But as I like to do before I end these things, if you have any social media, well, aside from, well, you can talk about the one we already mentioned, but if you have social media, feel free to share, and
All right. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, I think Blue Sky, TikTok, all of those things. The username is D Lawson Author on all of them. And I'd say the ones that I definitely use the most are Twitter and Instagram. But, if you're on those and you want to connect with me, that's awesome. Go for it. You can get my books on Amazon. They're on Kindle Unlimited. I have an audio book for The Envoys of War, the first book. I also sell signed copies on my website. And I started doing sprayed edges. I'm doing the DIY sprayed edges, and they look really cool. So like those are available on my website. They cost the same as the regular hardcovers, and just kind of, I'd love to sell you a book, people out there.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave, for taking some time out of your day to hang out and talk trade and books and Shakespeare.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, until next time, hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.